this particular session that is going to start is on investments in African sports economy. We'll be discussing the interests of private equity. We'll be looking at venture capital, public funding, as well as sponsorship. And joining Jovin on stage, help me welcome Serge Do, President, Côte d'Ivoire Athletics Federation. Okay, there he is. We also have, Megan Gadanu, partner, 10K Sports and Wellness Fund. Yes, let's give him a big round of applause as he comes. And the moderator for this session is the amazing Junior Kanamjire, who is the managing director at Intego Academy. Junior has a lot of experience looking at years working as an entrepreneur, as an investor himself, a mentor for investors. Okay, see, they've switched things up to make it even more spicy. So Junior will be also getting a share of the questions. So I think, over to you. And we'll have time for Q&A towards the end of the session.
Thank you very much. Maybe I'll start by letting everyone introduce themselves. I will start as I'm trying to moderate this panel. So good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Yuel. So I'm a partner at 10K Sports and Wellness Fund, which is a first-time investment fund focused on investing in SMEs, targeting the value chain of sports in Africa. So all these big words, meaning basically investing in B2C product and services for African middle class, being fitness centers, nutrition, retail, technology as well. We're actually fundraising and also working on identifying the pipeline. So that's a Pan-African fund, meaning that we are targeting companies across Africa, so Francophone, Anglophone Africa. And that's something that we've started in January this year. And by formation, I'm a banker. I was working in mergers and acquisition for the last 20 years. So maybe now I just pass the mic to my fellow panelists. Just Serge, if you want to introduce yourself. I mean, normally people in the room should already know you, given your performance this morning.
Should I introduce myself again? Oh, we just gain time and move. You did your presentation, all right? So I think is the one that. I mean, a few words. I have multiple hats, so maybe here I will just intervene as a former athlete and then now working at the Ivory Coast Federation, and then see the challenges that we may face as an association and federation to raise funds, and then the overview of the ecosystem, the sport at large. And I'm working currently with the Minister of Sport in Côte d'Ivoire, with the head of the Department of Sport Economy, to kind of build up a platform to collect all the data and create a marketplace for sport. I will touch that as an example, and then I think that's for now. I will keep my few words for later on.
Okay. Once again, in case you've forgotten, my name is Jovin Jenkins Matovu. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer of the prestigious Uganda Premier League. And I want to thank all of you for coming. You can give yourselves a round of applause because...
Okay, it looks like I'm the only unknown on the panel. My name is Junior Bichura Kanamujire. I'm the Managing Director of Intego Academy. Among many things, Intego Academy runs high-level entrepreneurship support for startups. We've touched on multiple verticals. Sports, hopefully, will be one of the sectors we'll be supporting. I have a background in many things, but for the purpose of this conversation, I've spent the past 5 years in VC, focusing on investing in startups on the continent. And I am very, very pleased to be on this panel to be able to contribute. Thank you.
Perfect. I think that's a good representation of the ecosystem, because we have the VC world, we have the professional world, the football club, we have the federations with Serge here, and I'm from the let's say the private sector. So maybe the first question for each of you guys is just to give the audience a view on the barriers that you see in each of these let's say verticals. So maybe we start with you, Serge, in terms of the federations and the way things are made today in Africa, and how is it, if that's the point, how are there barriers for potential investors?
Thank you, Uriel. I think from the federation standpoint, one of the reasons that we're facing is, I think, the legal entity that are governing the federation. Unless we change that, we won't be able to receive funds, except the government, yearly investment that they do, to the federation. And it's hard as a federation to kind of sign a big deal with corporate. It's hard also as a federation to kind of find shareholders, because the way in Francophone world, I don't know how it is in your side of the continent, we are formed as an association, like NGO type of association. So with that, how can you attract the big investors to come and be a shareholder of your thing? It's pretty hard. So you guys can maybe further develop that. So I think that's a big issue as a federation. And when you talk about investment in infrastructure, there's not enough money. Most of the money comes from the Minister of Sport, usually. So unless we change that legal framework, unless we change all of this ecosystem, it's going to be hard to, everything that we're talking about currently, to take Africa to the next level. That legal aspect can play a major role. I will stop there and then having people take over.
Yeah, Junior, if you want to follow on this one.
Since my friend Jovin has already spoken about the importance of data, is something that I wanted to drill on. I'll let you dig a bit deeper on that. I think the biggest issue we all know is infrastructure. But infrastructure, the way I look at it is, yes, the CapEx investment needed to be able to set up this infrastructure, but the the investment necessary to make that infrastructure viable, business-wise, in order to make it generate enough income for it to support the actual CapEx repayment of that investment. So I think on the continent we've done a lot of bad jobs with what we call white elephants, major stadiums that have been used for one big competition and being left to rot. And I think the biggest issue has always been around how do we make sure that we build a business model that makes this infrastructure sustainable, and that can be done through a few things, like focusing on food and beverages businesses around it. I think Zaira Court has done a fantastic job with building that complex that supplements the entire Kigali sports city. And then you're looking at other revenue-generating avenues such as merchandising and the like. I think if we rethink about sport infrastructure in a way that it can be a revenue-generating asset all through the year, it will come a long way in making sure that we not only invest in that infrastructure, but also make sure this infrastructure is sustainable enough for it to survive for a long time.
When you talk about infrastructure, I want to add something a little bit. How many federation or team club own their own infrastructure in Africa? That's the problem number one. Because most of the things are built by the Ministry of Sport that belong to the government. So again, all of these things we need to rethink all of this strategy. If you want to have a most friendlier investment ecosystem, we need to talk about the legal aspect, we need to talk about the infrastructure, but how can you semi-privatize those infrastructure or allow private investors to build more and more infrastructure? Let me give an example. Ivory Coast, where I'm coming from, the government built all the stadium to get ready for the African Cup of Nations. That's a lot of, money that the government had to borrow. Till today, we're in debt. We have to pay it, and there's no strategy to make those stadiums very, have a return on investment. It's hard. Not enough. Event beside the concert. So all of these things. How can we? I think it's time for public and then private partnership to allow African infrastructure to be more attractive and allow investors from abroad to come and help the club raise the level of the athlete, level of the country, make the infrastructure more, lucrative.
Well, for me, I want to give my answer regarding the barriers of investment. using our audience today, ladies and gentlemen here, I want to ask if any of you has heard about Bitcoin. Have you heard about Bitcoin? You've all heard about
Everybody
it?
for sure.
How many of you have invested in Bitcoin? By a show of hands. Okay, how many haven't invested in Bitcoin? By a show of hands. So, you know why I've asked? Is because we are speaking about what? Investment. You all know Bitcoin, right? Everybody knows Africa. They know we have the talent. Why haven't you invested in Bitcoin? It is the same question. Clarity, assurance, right? Visibility, governance. Because somebody, today you're planning to invest in crypto, then you hear somebody in South Africa has closed shop. You say, hey, I want to invest my money. And the same thing is happening with investors. They are trying to invest in maybe a league in a certain country, and tomorrow they are hearing another association has closed. The association president has been arrested. The league, that kind of information that is getting out there and in here is the actual barrier, one of the barriers, okay, right? The information that goes out there. Because, and I think that is the best example we can use. Because Africa is known. Who doesn't know about our potential? Everybody knows it. But what is the challenge?
That's a good point. I think one point to relate to that is usually investors look at the continent seeing the potential, as you say, seeing the youth, seeing the fan base, the fact that people are very engaged in sports. But one thing that is still missing is the monetization of that fan base, because we have people that are, we all, I think in the room, everybody here is a sports fan in some manner, but how many of us have actually spent dollars in African sports, i.e. bought tickets to go and see a game or anything regarding sports in an African arena? How many of us have actually bought African retail, sports equipment retail? How many of us have actually spent dollars on the continent for sports and the merchandising? Exactly. So this is actually something that is missing, because when we build these infrastructures, we should also think about the people that will actually fill these infrastructures. Who are the people that will attend these events? Do we produce enough content for people to be interested in and spending money? One interesting story is I was doing a road trip from Abidjan to Cotonou, so going through Ghana and Togo. And in Ghana, we were driving through a village where there was hardly electricity, but still you had like a board saying that tonight you have the game Arsenal versus Manchester City. So these guys don't have money, obviously, hardly had a roof above their head, but still they were able to pay some money to watch Mohamed Salah or any other African player playing in the English Premier League. And we should ask ourselves, why aren't we capable of having this excitement about our own continent, about the sports that are on the continent, our own championships? You mentioned Uganda championship, so I would love Ugandan people to be, I don't know if that's the case, you will tell me, but to be completely invested in the championship, being able to watch and view, etc., see the highlights, etc. So those are things that are missing, and that's one thing that we're trying to do with 10K, is actually to making sure that we are actually monetizing the fan base, making sure that everyone on the continent is perceived as a sports consumer, and we all are in some manner. So I think investors are also looking at that before putting their money at work. They're saying, okay, I'm willing to support you and build this infrastructure, but who is going to attend those games? So we have the BAL, that is a great example of what can be done, but BAL came with the NBA, so we all know the commercial power of the NBA. So that's something that is hardly touchable for any other league. So we should find a way to have our attendance focus on that. So for us, this is one of the barriers that we're trying to break, i.e. monetize the fan base and making sure that people are actually spending dollars on the sports ecosystem.
One question for you, because you're the one asking question. I know you have your portfolio is diversified of the type of investor that you've been able to attract to invest mainly in sport. Can you tell us a little bit about who are those people, and then why they came, how did you convince them to come to invest in sport in Africa?
Absolutely. No, that's a good one. As a sports fund, we're operating like a private equity fund. So we are targeting, let's say, three classes of investors. The first one are the DFIs, so the development agencies. Let's say those are, easy targets because, in Durban they have to invest in Africa. So we just need to convince them about sports as an asset class, as a business class, but this is the first pocket. And those are people that are heavily wanting to invest in infrastructure. So they see the benefits of having infrastructure. So for example, you have, maybe some of you know this fund which goes Helios, that attracted investment from IFC and Proparco, $50 million, which is a huge equity ticket. So that's the first class that we are targeting. The second one are the family offices, both international and African, because we do have family offices in Africa that are, let's say, powerful and that have enough money, enough scale to be pushing these kind of initiatives. And the third class are the athletes. We had a forum that you were moderating, Serge, this morning with the athletes, and this is exactly what we're trying to do, i.e. being an intermediary for the athletes that want to invest or actually not only money, but also the time in terms of identifying potential targets, developing the network, and preparing their after career. So those are, let's say, the three classes of investors that we are targeting. And for each of these, we have different struggles, different barriers. The GFIs, I think it's well known that, times have been challenging, very difficult for them to spend money, so that's the challenge. For the family offices, it's about educating them on sports as a business class, as an asset class, because a lot of people see sports only as investing in football clubs, for instance, and they have the bad examples of foreign clubs that are, that have gone bankrupted, etc. So they think that they're just throwing money away. But we need to educate them that, sport is wider than the professional world. Of course, you have infrastructure as well, but you also have, B2C and everything that you sell to customers that want to practice and view sports. And then for the athletes, I think it's all about what can they gain in terms of their brand equity by investing in a fund? Because as we were explaining this morning, the key assets for, let's say, sportsmen and sportswomen are the brand. Their career is not that long, so they need to leverage that brand as much as possible. So we are finding ways to show them, that they can leverage that through investing in a fund or partnering with a fund, so that they can at least, have exposure to other investment and also investment rationale.
I want to touch a bit on your field is quite innovative. It's quite new. Very few people, I haven't really come across a lot of specific investment vehicles that target the sports sector. And I think one of the potential investment class you could look for is corporates. Now, I was speaking to a good friend of mine who is one of the biggest sports sponsors in this country, and he was sharing some of the frustrations he had, and one of them is because of the lack of governance and structure in the sports environment. It's very discouraging for big corporates to be able to invest in the sports sector. However, for a fund like yours, again, I'm just throwing my ideas out there, finding ways to convince corporates that out of the CSR budget or out of their marketing budget,
sure.
which in some cases can amount to a ridiculous amount of money, finding ways to carefully invest that money and channel the money, whether it be in leagues, in sports, in infrastructure, in media, in broadcasting, could be a good idea.
Absolutely.
And I think you could be very surprised by how many of them will be able to take a bet on a firm like yours if you have a good investment strategy and investment thesis in the sector over investing in a team, which in a lot of cases disappoint the sponsors. Just my 2 cents.
That's a good point.
Yeah, very interesting submission from Junior here. You see, I want to give you an example still of the prestigious Uganda Premier League. Our league is 56 years old. No? So 56 years. So it is going to make 60 years in the next 3 years, and I think we shall have the sports biz there in Uganda. So, yeah. So usually the league in its prime years was at the top. Every Ugandan was going for the games. Young people from university, Then it got to a point, as you know how the demand curve operates. You hit, then you go down. So by the time I got into my position as the chief commercial officer of the league, the skepticism among the corporates, as you've been mentioning, was too big. Now remember, these are people who are probably 12 years when the league was the biggest brand in the country, and by the time the stadium was maybe just fenced with wire mesh. So you go to this person's office, you explain to him what you want, why you want him to come, but in his mind, he still knows the league where he used to go with his dad 20 years ago, which has wire mesh. And one of the CEOs told me, you see, I want to come and put money, but I would want to come with my children. But those games we're watching, somebody's easing themselves on the side, because that's what they used to remember. So when we sat down with our clubs and other stakeholders, we agreed to begin doing corporate visits. So we would select CEOs and we say this week we are going to do bankers. So we get 5 CEOs, put them in a van, take them for a game. And of the 60 that we took, only 7 could still recall that they were once in those facilities way back. So as he has mentioned, I think it is important to be intentional on showing these investors. Because, by the way, when somebody speaks about investors, before we speak about the global ones, we have local, as he has mentioned, we have local people, home people. People don't like calling them local. But we have domestic investors, that can be willing to invest. But we have to take the burden, or we have to take the route of action of justifying that there is actually value.
But I think what you're just touching right now is the same thing you was talking about.
Yeah.
The family office investors. We do have investors in Africa who love sport already. Yes, it's a matter of education.
Yeah, perfect.
We have, it's funny because we talked about it earlier, most of the investors in Africa are not as educated as in the financial ecosystem. That's number one. We African, we are more the mentality of actually traders, commerçants, traders than the businessman. So how can you transform this guy's mind to say, hey, listen, instead of buying rice and wait the next day to get interest, there is a time of maturation of your investment in over 2 or 3 years. Can you wait? You have to educate the people to have a better inclusion of investors in the sport ecosystem. So unless we do that, once we do that already, we will get already the next door investors rather than wait for the TFIs and all those big players to come. So that, plus the governing body and all of these things that we reshape, can do something very attractive.
Absolutely. And one thing investors recognize, and that's the question also for the panel, is that there is talent in Africa. I think all the big leagues in the US, for instance, this is why they are pursuing all the programs that you see from the NBA, the NHL, even the NFL, which is thinking about Africa, because they see that part of the talent they have in the leagues is coming from Africa. If you look at all these talents, the Giannis, the Joel Embiid, the Pascal Siakam, all these guys, so they want to invest because they want to actually feed their own leagues. So one area they're really interested in are the academies, and that goes with what Junior was mentioning. So the question will be, how do you see for the federations, for the football clubs, and for the academies, the way we could, let's say, broadcast our talent for the investors? Because we have these talents, and so people are going back and forth to the Western leagues, etc. But what else can we do to make sure that this is properly done so that investors can invest in there?
One thing, you mentioned something very important. We talk about brain drain and talent who are leaving Africa. Most of the soccer players, they dream about going to Europe. How can you return our players as much as possible before they have to go or even stay on the continent? So all of these things that we're mentioning, if we are in place, how many countries are holding the national strategy session yearly to think about all of these things that we're talking about? That's the take-home that we need to think about. Yeah. It's good to talk about all of these things piece by piece, but if we sit down as an African in every country to put together a strategy session with all the key players and then come out with a roadmap strategy to say, hey, by 25, 2020, 2030, or the next 20, 30 years. This is the short and medium and long-term goal that we try to achieve in terms of infrastructure, in terms of legal framework, in terms of investment, in terms of ecosystem. How can you even make the sport as it's a free zone for a moment to allow people to come in? That can be a good idea to have like every investors. I know in Ivory Coast we have a sport law that allowed any company who invested in a certain amount to get tax exemption, tax break. So all of these things are very good incentive that we can put into the place. So
I have a slightly different point of view when it comes to selling to investors. I've done what you're doing right now. I've spoken to LPs trying to raise for funds. It can be one of the most difficult things you can take on your life.
Indeed.
So my prayers are with you, UL. However, I found that the one thing that really gets the attention of investors is the market potential. And Africa has one of the most exciting market potential. If you look at the growing size of the middle class, which is at the end of this day, the end user, the customer of the sport industry in any market, that's very exciting. If you look at how fast the middle class has been growing and how much more people are actually attending games and can afford to do so, can afford to go to the bar next to the stadium, to buy the t-shirt, that's the most exciting part, right? And I think that should be the conversation when talking about investment on the continent. How do we capture or harness the data that's already existing about the growth of the middle class, which is at the end of the day the revenue generating market of the sport industry, and being able to use that as a selling point to get an investor and says, hey, excuse me, if 5 years ago we had 200,000 people going to stadiums and now we have 1 million, imagine what this will look like in 10 years. And investors always invest into the future. They don't invest in right now. So how do we then make the case for the target market of the sports industry to motivate investment on the African continent? That should be the conversation we ask ourselves. And that information is available, by the way.
Yeah, and also just to add on to that, I have a very wild thought of property mergers, or what some people refer to as multiple club ownership, right? Because investors do believe in expansion, definitely, and scope of cover, right? So you would find that, for example, we have basketball in Kigali. We have two very good clubs in Kigali. We have 2 in Uganda, 1 in Kenya. You see how we got Pamoja as East Africa? You know, property mergers. Because in some instances, you might not be able as a one property holder or rights holder to get that investment because of probably your scope, your potential is not that big, right? Or even your projections are not really viable. But if you do come together and add properties together, the way for us we said that now Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania, if each of us goes to bid for AFCON, none of us might get. But if we go the 3 of us, we shall get it. And we hosted Chan, and we're going to host AFCON. So I think the idea of multiple proposals, that the consideration should be given a thought as well.
That's actually quite exciting. Yesterday I was in a cab, and the driver was listening to a game. It's called the Kagame Sekafa Cup. It's one of the oldest football competition we have in Rwanda. It became a regional sensation. 8 teams from 4 or 5 different countries, and it's very exciting. So what he's talking about is, instead of just talking about the market potential of Rwanda, which you all know is a small market, how do we look at the market of Kampala, Nairobi, Kigali, Dar es Salaam, and put it together? Then you start looking at numbers that could be exciting. So how do we structure investment for the continent in property mergers, like you said, and having regional competitions where these cities can work together in harnessing this market potential, and that the numbers become interesting, in my opinion.
Yeah, to your point, you're right. When investors come to put into money, you want a return on investment. So the market size matters. True. So what he's saying is, for instance, we have these countries that we think are big, but it doesn't represent something in terms of return on investment. So by aggregating all of these countries together, even the World Cup is happening. We see the US, Canada, and Mexico join forces to organize the World Cup. So we, in Africa, with a micro country, we need to be able to expand our geography to be able to have a more return on investment because the scale of the territory matters, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Maybe I'm conscious of time. I don't know if the audience has a few questions, but I think it's good if it's a bit interactive. Is the mic
We can
mic
start with the
coming?
gentleman who didn't get to ask his question last time.
Yeah.
The gentleman over there. Yeah, let's start with him.
No, it's coming. Yeah. There's one here.
Hello. There we go. Hi, Dan Price here. Hello, Jovin. Dan Price from Opta Stats Perform. Just to let you know, all this talk about data is right up my street. Opta is the official data partner of the EPL. So it's very interesting when you're talking. One of the questions that I have, so EPL, La Liga, Serie A, CAF, AFC, CONMEBOL, CONCACAF, you get the picture. Now, one of the questions I have for you is when people are talking about investment, very often, and I hear a lot, they don't know what to invest in. Equally frustratingly, the people at the leagues and the federations don't know what to invest in as well. But one of the biggest problems for brands to invest in is the absolute dominance of EPL, as we've all talked about, EPL, La Liga, the European clubs in conversation points. How do you think you can change that dynamic from nobody's ever going to give up their EPL clubs, I get that. But how do you change the conversation in the street, the conversation at the bars, to your own league? Because more conversation means more engagement, means more sponsors are interested because people are talking about it. And it comes back to data, statistics. But what are your thoughts there, guys?
Very good question. We live in this technology world. So data is a new gold mine, obviously, right? So I agree with you. We need to get more. I heard somebody earlier in this panel talking about that. I myself, I work a lot with startups across Africa, payment, Visa and MasterCard, fintechs, etc. And then tomorrow we'll be announcing something in that regard. Yes, we need more data. We need to control what we're producing. We need to control data. Now that data as a mine is a new mine in sport. How can you use the AI and all those data generated by the sport industry so we can talk more about local content? That's why he's talking about when he was in Taxi Driver, talking about the local content. So from what you're saying, you have more people talking about the outside content, Arsenal, all of these things, PSG, Real de Madrid. So how can we? It doesn't impact. It doesn't. There's no interest for the investor. You're right. Yeah.
And just to jump on that, because I think this is where we want to have an impact. It's really local content because, of course, you have soccer, football. Everybody is on it. I mean, that's the sports number one, no question. But on top of that, you have some African sports that are widely followed by African people, but absolutely not broadcasted. Okay. You have the wrestling in Senegal, you have the Dambe in Nigeria, Benin, etc. So you have some local sports that actually, drive a number of people that are really, really large. But once again, we're lacking data because those are done, the old-fashioned way, not broadcasting, etc. So maybe we should focus our interest not only on, the bigger sports, which I think they're sustainable by themselves because everybody follows, football. I follow football, etc. But we need to, put our attention as well on this local content to be able to drive that interest that we are searching. But to do that, we're missing a part right now, which is the broadcasting. How do we make sure that someone in the diaspora, in China or whatever, is following the Dambe match or the wrestling match? Actually, to be honest, they're doing it. I have some Senegalese friends in China, they know the results of, the wrestling game that happened, 1 hour ago. They know it. But it's not like, done professionally. And that's something that we should do because, as you were mentioning, this is a gold mine and this is a way actually to promote African sports and African roots. And what you've done that, you educated people to that, then they will have the same behavior with other sports as well because they know that, they can, consume sports and being monetized.
I think it's all about package. How can you repackage the African sport offer? If you want to do a wedding, your wife needs to have a good makeup. How can you put a makeup on the African sport the way it is right now to be marketable? I think this is what it is. So that's why we're here. We all brainstorm, and the market size is here. I mean, earlier the lady from the ball gave us a number. Over 20 billion value market, growth of 8+% yearly. That means there's profit. So why that the same people, the same continent, the same sport, the NBA come to Africa with their strategy, their package, their know-how, their best practice, and change immediately within less than 5 years. That means the problem resides in the package, in the know-how, the approach. Do we have the right people at the right time? How can they are able to do so just by exporting their know-how from the US to Africa, and then guess where the ball is right now is skyrocket. So I think that's part also we need to think about how can we export the best practice and then apply, because there's no rocket science, so we're not going to reinvent the wheel.
Absolutely. And this is where we need private investment as well, because that's a question we haven't really touched upon, but between public and private, we shouldn't always wait for public investment, because let's be realistic here, it's not on top of the agenda of our ministers and governments, etc. I think, maybe they have other priorities, sadly. So private investment should come in there because this is an asset class. There is money to be made. It's not only philanthropy and NGOs and things like that. I mean, this is a whole sector where money can be made the right way, and it has a lot of impact as well in terms of job creation, in terms of publicity, advertisement, etc. So we need that, and that this is a thesis that we're trying to promote among investors, and Junior was referring to corporate as well, and that's a good point. And I think there is a whole ecosystem that should think that way. And clearly, I think we won't be able to do any of that if we don't have data, because at the end of the day, people that want to earn money, they just want to have something that is very very clear and have visibility on what they're getting into.
I wanted to say something as. Before they stop us from giving closing remarks. So, you see, when we speak about investment, I think one very pertinent issue that we haven't mentioned is our mode of operation as entities. I mean, for example, if we live today here as stakeholders, administrators, and do know, because you know now that you need data, right? We have to go away from simply knowing and becoming executional, right? Because the investor, wants data. You do not have that data. So concentrate on data first. Because we look at this, as Daniel has mentioned, we look at these very big entities, the brands in sport, and you want to put your entity at that level, but even the smallest thing of, for example, just data. So you want to get the whole chunk, instead of biting, for example, bite off the data first. Then you bite off talent management. Then you bite off capacity building. Then you bite off human resource. You see? Because I even think the idea of investment involves what kind of human resource do you have when you speak about governance. Sport should move away from having anybody who likes the sport, who has passion. Sport has moved away from passion. It is left that bus already. That stage, it left already, that station. The idea of passion, I love football so much, so I should be the one managing this entity. I love basketball, I've always loved to run. We need to move away from that and operate professionally. Yes, put the right people in the right places, and then we execute.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I want to answer this question directly. Just give me a second. I'm going to give you a straight out answer. If I was we are in this position and I've just raised money, media and broadcast will be the sector that I put most of my money in for multiple reasons. The biggest one is that advertisement has been one of the most proven revenue-generating avenues in the history of everything. And it also has a double advantage of being able to be the biggest noisemaker, right? If you look at the rise of podcasts, for example, I must have followed 15 new sports podcasts in the past year or so, right? And they're all equally entertaining. And because they're entertaining, people will listen to them. And because people listen to them, sponsors will give them money, right? So it's both a good income generation investment, but also a big noisemaker so that you can spread the news about the sports, about statistics that's been collected, but also about the potential, the potential in the sports, right? Again, the radio show I was listening to in the taxi wasn't just talking about the game. They're talking about players, they're talking about stats, they're talking about future games, they're talking about the ecosystem in general. So if you ask me, straight up answer to a straight up question, media broadcasting, focusing on podcasts, it's definitely an investment for me.
Yeah, and just small. You see.
They don't want you to ask your question.
Let me just give you a very small insight that I think is very useful. I was speaking to a CEO of one of the very top leagues yesterday about the discussion we're having today. And I got to know something very interesting. There is a year in which Ghana, right, had 600 professional players in Europe. 600. Yes, 600 in a year. That is either born and raised, but there were 600 all over, 600 players. Now, why I'm giving you this insight is we need to know when we are speaking about investment, what are we selling? Because if the investor is made to understand that aspect, right? That because if Ghana can give Europe 600, Africa can give 3,000. If somebody asked you how many gold medals has Africa gotten from the Olympics in the last 5 years, you'd be shocked about the number you'd get spread out. Now, you'd mention a country which has more numbers. No, that's not African. But I'm saying spread out in scope. Different culture, different languages, but all from one continent. Over 500 golden medals. Okay? So when we are speaking of investment on the continent, we need to make it very clear that this is a growable product. There are regions where you cannot invest because there's no, they've reached the roof. They're at 85%. It's not going anywhere anymore. Okay? So what would you rather do? Would you refuel a vehicle which has reached Kigali already or one that's at the border? Because it's not going anywhere. There is no more room for expansion. But in Africa is where, for example, you've seen NBA came just 5 years ago. Is it 5 years? And see how much they've grown. That is all justification on how much room for growth, how much room for return on investment, how much room for actual profit is there on the continent. I think that is very important to note.
Sir, finally.
So finally, thank you so much. My name is Regis Dushimimana, and I'm an entrepreneur. I love it that you did mention about makeup and packaging. That's what we do. We have a Rwandan African sportswear brand called Misozi. And as a Rwandan and African brand committed to quality, community impact, how can we work with your leagues, federation to co-create partnerships that not only meet your performance needs, but also grow Africa's, I would say, whole sports economy. I would say, like you mentioned about the way, like in Uganda, corporates still imagine the leagues as they saw them as kids. And one of those things is, I think it's the appearance and the branding of the teams within your products. So how can we partner with leagues and federations, like you said, as an African brand, instead of us going, we've seen teams wearing Adibos, that doesn't exist, such things. So at least now we bring it to our level, but that has also that very African spirit. As for us, our motto is if you breathe, Kotana, and it's something that we believe in. with the African tales and everything, that could really push us and also help us to create more jobs as we are the youngest continent.
I think, first of all, what you might need to do, my fellow panelists will add on to that, but one of the most important things is research. Ladies and gentlemen here today, I want you to look into this room, okay? You see how many people are here. Compared to the brands we have on the continent, the sports properties we have on the continent, you see how many people are here, okay? So if you're looking for partnerships, you can simply do that research, because of course we do have more than 50 leagues just for football alone, meaning we have over 2,000 leagues if you're going to add the football, basketball, netball, volleyball, swimming, cricket, rugby, motocross, over 2,000 on the entire continent. But you are less than 1,000 here. Okay? So you have a lot of opportunity to get those partnerships. But you have to do your research and find out who needs what is something struggling with. We had a workshop that we did as the Uganda Premier League at the start of this year, where we had Tilopi Mosepe. He came and spoke to our club chairman and owners. And he was sharing with us about Mamelodi Sundowns, okay? And he told us how they won championships, and then at a moment, they asked themselves a question. Wait, we are winning these championships, but how is our performance in the public? Okay? Because on the pitch, they were winning. On the pitch, they were winning, but on ground, outside, in the streets, they weren't winning. So now they came up with what they now call the Mamelodi Way, WAY, which is Women, Africa, and Youth. And now they've begun doing tours around inclusivity, purely for Africa and for youth. And you're seeing the changes they're making. Why am I giving you that? Is that when you make your research, you get to understand which league or club or property or player is looking for what. Because you can't sell soap to a person on their birthday. They're looking for a cake. You see? So when you have your research and know that, okay, Junior's birthday is on Sunday, so I'll send him a photo of a nice cake on Friday. So when he says it is a good cake, then I tell him, by the way, you don't have to pay cash. You pay any time, but take the cake. Not to show him soap on his birthday. What I'm saying is make your research and get to know who needs what and how. The opportunities are very, very many. And this is a very small portion of the stakeholders in sports. You know that. We have countries where this is the entire delegation that goes for just one match. So you can imagine.
Yes, just to add on to what you just said and in regard to your question, I think for everything that we have identified as an obstacle that we try to raise the level of the sport in Africa in general, there's more room for competition than competition when it comes to what you have to offer. So for that, I think you need to propose your service to all these people because they don't even know sometimes. You have to educate them. You have to approach them. So I think that's the right step to take. You have to calling them and go to them. Sometimes they don't even know that they need your solution. So you have to go to the federation, to the Ministry of Sport, all of these things. As we speak in Côte d'Ivoire, I was mentioned earlier, we got together to create the first marketplace for sport on a national level. What is that? Gathering data, and then put together all the vendors, everybody who's related to sport equipment, you name it, any services that are related to the sport ecosystem are going to be held into one app, and super app for sport. So people like you can be registered into that marketplace, and as people, whoever needed, the club, the federation, can come to immediately at one click to kind of get your service.
So I think proactiveness is the answer. Thank you.
Oh, not sure.
That's the
So,
last one.
if I may, yes, thank you. First of all, thank you for this discussion, which is rich in point. The one impression that comes across sometimes, and especially listening to you, is the onus on the whole issue of investment into African sports falls on federation, leagues, and governments. But what if we were to look at it as investors being part of the problem? And I will explain. I'm old enough to remember when no one watched the English Premier League. It wasn't called the English Premier League. It was a terrible league. People, they had hooligans. Women didn't go to the stadium. The quality of the football was horrible. I was young in Cameroon, and I was watching Cameroonian Football League. One thing they did came in part from investors. Private TV companies investing in the broadcasting of games. That's 1992. Fast forward today, that's the only league we watch. Almost. Now, the case I'm making here is the same we've seen in African telecoms. So when telecoms became big in Africa, most Western companies wouldn't invest. It took Mo Ibrahim, a Sudanese businessman, to put Celtel out. It took another company from the Gulf to come, and then Orange and others, and the South Africans. So the case I'm making here is that investors are actually funny on African football. African football doesn't die. In every single team, the oldest team still exists. In any single of our countries. Al Ahly in Egypt, Pirates in South Africa. So someone was saying the EPL is the most watched league and blah, blah, blah. Partly true, except for 2 weeks in Tanzania, there's one game that makes sense. Yanga, Simba. In South Africa, Pirates, Orlando, Sundowns.
In Rwanda is Rayon Sport and APR.
Thank you. And in many other countries. So my case is this. Investors into African football are making the same mistakes other made on telecoms. They're looking at the chaos that we have in many federations, and they're looking at Africa as a country. Africa is not a country. Cameroon is terrible, but it's not the case for Gabon in terms of, and I hope there's no Cameroonian in the room.
Carlos is not there anymore, you can go.
Yeah, no, I spoke to him before. So, first problem, Africa is not a country, it's a continent that is very diverse. Second, the passion for football exists in every single country and starts at the grassroots. That's where the clients are. I'm always fascinated I live in Kenya, and although no one goes to the stadium, there's one game in town, Gor Mahia against AFC Leopard, and everyone shows up. So investors are making the same mistake where they're looking at this and they're saying there's no money. First, there's a lot of money in Africa, as someone noted with the middle class. And second, they need to put the effort to build the product. One thing I've seen, and I will end with that, big telecom company, I won't name them, buy the naming rights of a league, throw in $1 million, $2 million, then do nothing. I've ended up in conversation with some saying, oh, this is our CSR contribution. They are a problem, not all of them, if you hear, so don't take it as an insult. But they're partly a problem because they understand how to improve a product more than the federations and the leagues, and they could do this, and this will be better for everyone. And I'm saying investors, African investors as well, because not many are investing in our leagues. Thank you.
Okay, also, thank you very much, sir.
I think we need to wrap up, yeah. We need to wrap up.
Jovin, we really need to.
Last time. This time, let me close.
Maybe the last word. Yeah. Maybe the last word. The last word is exactly what Junior mentioned in terms of broadcasting and actually investing in content. I think it's all about that. That's what you're saying. I mean, as long as we have the right content, investors will follow. So it's on us to have that right content. I think that's exactly what this is.
I think the mistake is not on the investor side, it's the people pitching to investors are not doing a good job in selling the data that's available and the potential market growth. I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is that investors go look for opportunities. The reality is most of them get opportunities presented to them, and if they're not being presented to them the right way, they're only going to be left with the bias and the perception they have about an ecosystem, including the sport ecosystem. I think the job in the federations here is to change the narrative when speaking to investors, mostly focus on the growth potential of a sector, focus on the middle class and the data is available, and then investors are going to be listening. That's my close-up.
Yeah, for me, I think that usually when you're driving at night and the police finds you driving while you're drunk, they ask you to park your car. Rights holders, league holders, federations and clubs, the moment you begin acting unprofessional, you asked to put the property aside. I think you've seen FIFA coming into a country and telling the government to withdraw from it. This happens because there is no professionalism at a certain level. So I think it is pertinent upon us to make sure that each value point, each touch point of the entire property or that whole aspect of the sport is executed professionally. The players must know what to do, the staff must know what to do, the regulator must know that everything has to be involved in that, and at the end of the day, we shall have local and foreign investors. I thank you.
Sorry, closing?
Oh, we still have some more
I
time?
think we said enough. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Let's appreciate our panelists and the moderator for this amazing conversation. If we could pause, take a group picture, and also appreciate Jovin for the creative illustrations in driving the point across. That is very much appreciated. Let's take a group photo. We have the photographers ready. Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much. And we're going to continue the momentum with our last panel for today, which is on esports gaming and the next generation of athletes. We'll be looking at the booming sector, which is the gaming sector that is really on a rise. In this session, we'll explore how esports can be integrated into national sports agendas, how it can create jobs and foster new talent. Once again, we'll escort our panelists as they come to the front with a warm round of applause. To start us off, help me welcome Desiré Koussawo, Président de l'Association France Esports. Let's welcome him as he makes his way. You're welcome. Very delighted to have you with us. We have Hugo Obi, founder, Malio Games. There he is. You're welcome. You're welcome. And our final panelist is Ronnie Lusigi, President of Esports Kenya Federation. Karibu sana, Ronnie. And the moderator for this session is Nozi. By now, she's a very familiar face. Nozi, very, very welcome to the podium. Let's escort her with a warm round of applause until she takes a seat, yeah? Let's end today's discussion with the right energy as how we started. Let's continue. Let us continue. Yes. And we'll be talking about something very exciting, esports, something that is very booming. Nozi, over to you.
Thank you so much, Fiona. And yes, I'm back on your stage again. And this time we're talking about esports. And my colleagues here are actually going to explain, if Fiona is saying esports is booming, what does that mean? And also, how do we integrate it into national sports agendas, create job opportunities, foster new talent, and convince African parents that esports is actually a sport? Firstly, I have Desiré, who's going to tell me what he does in the esports industry.
First of all, thank you for the invitation. It's my first time in Rwanda. It's a beautiful country. I think I will come back here. And thank you for this invitation to speak about esports before all these sports people. This is really something important for us to have this bridge between the sports and esports. Just to introduce myself in few words, first of all, I'm here as the president of France Esports. France Esports Association is trying to gather all the esports stakeholders in France, like professional team, professional tournament organizers, marketing agencies, let's say every stakeholders that are really involved in development of esports in France. So talking with the governments, talking with the business leaders and so on to develop the French market when it comes to esports. Besides that, I am also the president of SAGES Africa. So SAGES for Services for Africa Gaming and Esports. The purpose is really to develop esports on the continent, making the bridge between these, let's say, lost continents when it comes to esports with the rest of the world. So these are my main hats. I have many others, but it will be enough for today.
Thank you so much. And then moving on, Hugo, can you please tell us more about what you do at Malio Games?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me here. Before I speak about what I do, I think it's important to understand a little bit about the audience. Hi, good evening. I know it's late in the day, but just out of curiosity, how many people, just show of hands, how many people in the audience have heard about esports before? Okay, keep your hands up, please. Leave your hands up if you know what esports is.
I don't know if I know.
Okay, good sample. So I did expect a little bit of that. So what I do on my day job is making video games. I work with a team of people to create interactive experiences that can be played on your mobile phone. We recently worked on a partnership with Disney on the Iwaju Rising Chef. So this is a cooking game that we built based on African, well, specifically Nigerian food. We're currently working on a Match 3 property renovation game called Safari City. That's available, all our games are available on the App Store, so you can download them. But then I also do something else. The games industry is very much unknown to most people. Esports is a segment of the games industry, so that's the reason why I started off speaking about what I do in games. So the games industry is very much unknown, and one of the work that I do is to help document the games industry through a report. So there's been a lot of talk about data today, so providing data insights into the activities to grow the games industry on the African continent. And as a result of this, my team and I are currently working on the first esports report for Nigeria. And this is, again, trying to articulate what the value proposition, so some of the questions that the panel is trying to answer today, is trying to document that so that we can make that information easily accessible to a wide variety of stakeholders, policymakers, corporates, investors, parents as well, education institutions, who have this same curiosity of what is esports. So that's part of the reason why I'm on the panel, is to share some of the learnings and insights that I have gained from speaking to the key players within the esports space. I think what's fascinating is that the world around us is changing. One of the gentlemen who asked the question towards the end of the session spoke about the fact that very few people watched the English Premier League back in the 80s. And if you look at the types of content that we consume, the maybe slightly older generation still watches traditional sports. But if you start going to the younger age group and you start asking them questions like, do you watch the Olympics? Do you watch football? What do you spend? Do you watch traditional television? Right? There's a shift in pattern of consumption of media. And what you will start to find is that people are spending extensive amount of time watching user-generated content. And a lot of that user-generated content is people playing this thing called video games. So that is a brief highlight of what esports is.
Thank you so much for that, Hugo. And there is actually a report, I think it was Manchester United, where they found out that the current generation, like the younger generation, can't watch a 90-minute match. So it also talks to where we are moving with the new generation as well when it comes to watching sports. But now I'm going to move to our colleague Ronnie from Esports Kenya, Federation in Kenya, just to hear what they do in Kenya and just to tell us more about esports in Kenya.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's okay. Thank you very much. It's my second time here. And just like to start with the parable of the lost sheep. Where they said, if 99 are there but one is lost, it's better to go and find that one. And to congratulate SportsBiz Africa Forum, because in a forum you normally say if there's one thing that we can implement from what we talk, or a preacher will say, if there's one person I can save today, it will be a successful crusade. So last year we spoke about esports, and to their credit, Sportsbid Africa did organize an esports competition, which was held on Sunday at Zaria Court, bringing together 8 African players, and over 20,000 people have watched that on YouTube. But my name is Ronnie Lusigi. I'm the president of Esports Kenya Federation, and also founder of Index G Esports. Index G Esports is an esports agency that does esports event, esports content, and esports competitions. We work with Desiree as some of our partners, Sages Africa, French Ligue 1, now Sportsbiz Africa, and Esports Kenya Federation, just like French Esports Federation, is a national sports federation in Kenya, where we bring together esports organizations, players, teams, and clubs in the continent. I also serve in Global Esports Federation, in the International Relations and Development Committee, where we try, especially in the African continent, to spread awareness and development of esports. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ronnie. So I want to know, Desiree, from you as you work in France, what does it take? Oh, okay, first question is, where is esports in France? Is it growing? Secondly, what does it take to grow in, esports in the country?
First of all, I want to perhaps specify what's esports, because for many people, esports is like, developing video games, like my friend here, Hugo. And I just want to really specify what is esports and what is the importance of esports when it comes to like economic level. Esports is competitive video games. When you talk about video game industry, you have many different kind of practices. You have, of course, people developing games, people playing games. I'm pretty sure most of you already played on mobile, on console, on PC, some games, really fancy games, alone in your bedroom or I don't know where. This is not esports. Esports is really competitive competitive video games competition, meaning 2 people or 2 groups of people playing each other against each other. This is really there we are starting to talk about esports. And when you come to the markets, just some figures, because I know most people are really measuring the success of something with figures. So if you come to, for example, the music industry in the world is $25 billion. If you come to cinema industry is something like, I know, 45 or 50 $1 billion. When you come to series like Netflix, Amazon, and so on, we are talking about something like perhaps $80 billion. So if you add the 3 industries, one of the 3 biggest industries in the world, you should have something like perhaps 150 or 60 billion dollars. Video games industry is $200 billion. So video games alone is higher than cinema plus music plus series industries. And in this $200 billion, you have $25 billion for esports, meaning competitive video games, organizing competition, developing in industry in the games, because the competitive games are free-to-play industry, meaning you have the game for free, and then you are paying in the game to get some fancy things and so on. So $25 billion is the same level of music industry, for example. So you see, we are talking about something huge. I think sports industry is something like $500 billion. And when you come to Africa, so Africa is perhaps, or I think you know the figures, 1% of the market, 1% maximum. Yeah. So when you come to sport, I think it's 2%. It depends of the industry, but we are really, really far from what we could or we should do to develop this opportunity. I say this opportunity and not this threat, because when you are when you are fathers or mother and you have people, you have children paying, yeah, what are you doing? Yeah, go to school. And yes, this is also an opportunity. Coming to my own experience. So I'm in France. I started, let's say, moving in this esports industry in 2000, so 25 years before. And now I'm trying, as a president of France Esports, to build this bridge between this ecosystem. It's a small ecosystem, of course. It's not, you know, the automotive industry or the food and beverage industry, but still there are careers, jobs, there are opportunities to create entrepreneurs. And as president of France Esports, I'm trying really to explain to our leaders, political leaders, but also business leaders, that there is an opportunity for France to also exist. And it's working. Currently, it's working. We have most of the biggest esports event now coming in France. We had the Fortnite World Cup last week there. We had the League of Legends Champions is there. I think all the biggest publishers now are coming in France because we had this, you know, discussions with politicals saying, hey, this is an opportunity. You can have the biggest events here in France and creating value and so on. So we, as France Esports, we talked with the government, for example, to lower the tax, the VAT for the esports event because it was 20% and now it's 5.5%. This is a long run, a long battle to explain them that as sport, because sport has already this reduced VAT 5.5 since, you know, decades. And esports is only since last year because since 6 years we were battling to get this opportunity. So this is really what we are trying to do in France, is to build this framework to make this really interesting for anyone to develop its esports opportunities in the country.
Thank you so much. But I want to know specifically from Hugo, because you've done a report on esports, what are the opportunities? Because if we are trying to grow esports in Africa, you know that with African parents, you need to say these are the opportunities that are there. You can't just say we're trying to grow it. What are the opportunities that are there?
Yeah, so as part of the work that we were doing, we looked at the esports value chain. So what are the interdependencies? Who are the key players? What is the key opportunity for this new form of expression, if you want to think it as that? So at the far end of one is the people who actually playing the games. So these are the players, you know, anybody that you see on a console, on a mobile phone playing a game. On the other spectrum are, you know, like people like us who make the games. So we are making the games, I think Desiree was just talking about League of Legends, World of Warcraft. So these are the studios, the engineers, the designers who actually craft these games. In between that, you have people who organize the events. So these are event organizers, I believe that is where, you know, one of the areas where you guys sit within, who do the facilitation, who get the license permissions, who put together, you know, like an arena like this. You have the fans, people who watch. Either they're watching in person or they're streaming, because like this content is also available. You have the brands who are leveraging this as a mechanism for engagement. You have the content creators, people who are just doing pure entertainment. You have the, you know, like you have the people who are doing the filming. You have the commentators, the people who are doing the commentary, like you would have in a football match. What am I missing?
Oh, I think you already presented everything.
Excellent. So,
of course, you like in sports, when you talk about esports, you need to broadcast it.
Yes.
So you need to have medias, specific medias, and you know, this kind of.
Yeah, but the broadcast nature is not traditional television. It's streaming on like YouTube, on Twitch, on Instagram, on Facebook. So it's streaming. So that's kind of like what the value chain for esports looks like. Now, where does the opportunity exist? I think that some of the key challenges that we have today, the future challenges, the challenge that is coming, that is inevitable, is that the younger generation is going to consume less of the kinds of media that still sits at the top today. And the strategy to then either, you got to meet your customers where they are, is the same. So where are these customers and what media are they consuming if they're not consuming the traditional content the way that is designed to be consumed? And that starts to create new market opportunities. There are new skills that are being developed. You have these influencers coming through. You have this community, which is the other key part about the esports. It's a community. There's huge fandom and fan base built around it. It's pretty much in the same level as your premiership. So, you know, some of the bigger IPs, you know, your Fortnite, your League of Legends, have whole football arenas filled with fans wearing merchandise, chanting the names of the stars. So you have new stars who are emerging. You know, he talked about the streaming of your competition having 20,000 streams. You know, these are subscribers, followers who are tuned in. This is a new media platform. And for us, it's how do we then build the skills required to play in this new arena, this new space. You know, like we can ask ourselves a question, is this a temporary thing or is this permanent? Games have been around for the longest time. Games generate more revenue than film, music combined. So it's not temporary. And then all of the younger kids today have now access to a powerful computer called the smartphone. And they are starting to play at a much younger age, way younger. I can't imagine any parent in here who has a child, you know, like less than 5, who has a smartphone, who says my child does not play video games. Show of hands, anybody, well, that would be calling you out. But it would be a big question for me. So this is now the way that they are learning, the way that they are growing. And they're a new audience, consuming very differently. So the market for content, for entertainment, is going to shift. And the people who are going to now emerge as the leaders of that space are this younger group, because it is harder for the older group to start sitting down and picking up the video games, because for us, there's still that cultural conflict that the kids are not challenged by in the way that we are.
No, thank you so much. But talking about like how you find that market, especially in Africa, moving to you, Ronnie, and talking about Kenya in Africa as a whole, how do we then get government to support esports? And also, isn't there a gap? Because I come from a village, right? But because I stay in a city in Johannesburg, I've got access to Wi-Fi. But are the kids in the villages not being left behind because there's no access to Wi-Fi in the villages?
Yeah, thank you. When it comes, first of all, to involving governments, I think it's always a process. It's not an event. And governments, first, we must start by appreciating they have a lot on their plate. So we must first be strategic on our side to present esport from a socio-economic perspective. I think sometimes the challenge we do is when we talk about esports, we talk about these big commercial numbers, and somebody can say, like, these guys are doing fine. They just mentioned 200 billion, they just mentioned what? $1 million. But as he was saying, you need to show the aspect of this is an employer. You need to show the aspect that this is keeping youth away from crime and drugs. You need to show how it is contributing to the GDP of the country. In Kenya, for example, PwC estimates that in the financial year 2024, the video gaming spend was crossing $116 million annually in the country. So you need to show that, and now come to what Desiree was saying, and tell government, if you are to facilitate this industry, perhaps more could be spent. This coming weekend, for example, we are hosting an African championship in Kenya. That is value for the country. That is opening up the country. People who develop games, like our friend here, they do things like servers. They do things like regional offices. This is employment for people. I know Rwanda, Kenya, they're all building smart cities. In Kenya, we call it Tatu City, Konza City. These are opportunities because esport is opening you up to growing not only your sports, but also your digital economy. So I think when you speak to, for us, the challenge we should challenge ourselves in the sports and esports sector is to speak to government in a language that fits their objectives. And then now we can introduce the very much of the commercial side of it. And when it comes really to inclusion, as you say, I think it is valid, and that's why people who do research like Hugo will tell you, mobile gaming is growing at a very fast pace in Africa. I think the only place that mobile gaming is growing faster than Africa is Southeast Asia. Your Malaysias, Indonesias, and Thailand. Because video game publishers are also now realizing that every market can't be the same. In France, where Desiree comes from, you see people playing PC games. You need maybe, on the lower end, $2,000 to have one proper gaming PC. And to play a professional PC competition, if I'm an organizer, I need 10 of those. If I am a team, I need at least 5 of those. So that may not work here. It's pretty much like sports. There are sports that work best in other regions and some don't work in other regions. So the key is for us to diversify. Where we can push mobile gaming, we do push it. I know there are many games right now that require also lower latency. People like games like Konami eFootball has been doing well in the African continent, like in the Kenyan perspective, because 2 or 3 years ago they made their mobile game very light. So if a Kenyan spends maybe $0.25, they can be able to play for like 2 hours if they spend that on mobile data, which for them is really massive, and it's a free-to-play game. So it's also for holistically for us to look at that, but also to go there and to find those talents that are outside the city. It happens in football. They say there that Marcelo came from a village. So there are competitions that you can set up that are offline, that what you need is to bring people together. And perhaps the advantage that we have as Africans is video gaming is very communal, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, because of the costs. So many people have grown up where one console is serving maybe 50 friends. So it's an opportunity for us organizers and federations, because Africans are already used to playing video games in a communal perspective, as compared to maybe to Paris, where Desiree is, everybody in a block has PlayStation. Perhaps in a middle-income block in Africa, only 2 people have PlayStation. So from a viewer's perspective, if I'm doing a live event, already I'm speaking to people who have a culture of watching others play and playing together with others.
No, thank you so much. And I'm happy that you realize that inclusion is also very important, because that becomes a concern when it comes to esports, that, okay, how do we include people who are in the villages and things like that? But I wanted to know from you, Desiree, when it comes to infrastructure now, esports is growing, government is saying, okay, we're buying into your strategy. What infrastructure is needed?
It's a large topic, because when you talk about infrastructure, you have many kinds of infrastructure. First of all, if you come to France, of course, if you want to organize a competition, you don't mind. You know, you just rent a venue, and then you ask for internet, and you plug your PCs or your console to launch everything. You plug the electricity and so on. That's natural. In France, it's not a question. If any publisher comes in France to organize an event, the physical infrastructure it's easy. You have venues, you have internet, electricity, and so on, servers. You want to play League of Legends, you have a server in Europe. So everything is natural. And when you come to Africa, you understand that. You know, I'm handling a company since 3 years now, Segis Africa. And the first time I came, it was in Senegal to organize the final of a competition it was the same thing. So I asked for a venue, I got a venue. Internet, yeah, don't worry, we have internet. Electricity, yeah, don't worry, we have electricity. Then I came, it was a competition between 5 different countries, and FIFA with Mali players, Burkina Faso players, Chad and Senegal. And so in the finals were in the French Institute in Senegal. And that was the surprise. Oh, yeah, so you have internet. Oh, yeah, we have something. And then when you start to ask the question, you understand that when we are talking about internet in France, we're not talking about the same thing in Africa. Infrastructures means that when you want to organize a competition, you need to have high-level, high-quality internet infrastructures. We don't in Africa. We don't. Even in the biggest countries, even in South Africa, in Nigeria, in Kenya, these big countries, you don't have the quality of internet infrastructure needed to really organize high-level international standard events. This is a real problem because you want to talk with Riot Games. Riot Games is the publisher of League of Legends. It's like the football of esports. They are part of my board at France Esports as a publisher. And when we are talking about esports in, let's say, emerging countries like Africa, that's a real problem for them. They have to set up their servers and so on, but they don't have the proper electricity, internet access as they need to organize their events. So, okay, let's make a server, but you are not sure to be able to organize an event, an international event there. There is a question of ROI, investing time and money to make something. So that's the first point, infrastructures as internet, electricity, and so on. But when you talk about infrastructure, you are also this kind of non-perceptible infrastructure like taxes, Yeah, I'm Tencent, for example. Tencent is publishing PUBG Mobile. Everybody, I think, knows PUBG Mobile, one of the biggest games in Africa. And I was talking with them, saying, hey, you have 1.4 billion people in Africa. You don't want to invest. Can you set up a server? There isn't any server to play. In Nigeria, it was last year. Nigeria, I said, okay, let's try it because we are organizing an event with Aegis and Tencent in Nigeria. So we will set up a server in Nigeria, Lagos. Then we will provide our servers for all the West Africa region. Okay, let's go that. So they set up the server, and we launched the competition. And then they asked Senegalese a player from Senegal to connect, a player from Côte d'Ivoire to connect, and then they called me what the fuck? Sorry. People, when they want to connect to the servers in Nigeria, they have to connect first to the server in Europe to coming back in Nigeria. So it's worse playing on the server in Nigeria than playing the server from Europe. So by talking, you understand that there are not only a technical question. We need to have a proper agreement between operators, Telkom, MTN, and so on, in Africa, like in Europe. In Europe, they are all interconnected. We need to have the same thing here. The same, the taxes. They told me, yeah, if I sell my gaming goodies, let's say, in Senegal, in Nigeria, in Togo, it's not the same rules, it's not the same taxes, it's not easy. So it's too complicated. We need to have an open market to be able to develop this. So this is also a question for our leaders, political leaders. How can we open the market to make it easier for these guys, publishers, but also investors, also sponsors, to be able to develop it? So I could speak 2 hours with all the issues when it comes to infrastructures. We have in Africa a real effort to do if we want to open our market to all these guys, because they are not philanthropics, They are here because they want to win money. So if we don't open the market, they are just calculating the ROI. I put $1 in Africa, how much it could produce for me, and for now it's not a balanced investment for them. We have some efforts to do.
Thank you so much. And actually, talking about cell phone networks, I was at the Comic Con Africa last week, and Telkom was part of it, as well as Acer and all these other brands. But I think it's also important now to get our questions from the audience. And yeah, if you have any questions for our panelists.
Thank you very much for a very well presentation or panel discussion that you have received. I just want to make you very comfortable. I'm speaking on behalf of the 10 member states in Southern Africa, South Africa, Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, you name it. It's a zone for sports. Electronic sport is booming that side very well. We have got what we call youth games that will take place every second year. And meaning for almost 2 years now within the SADC, the Southern Africa sports area, we normally have got the games for electronic sport, which is going very well. So it's very well coordinated, very well organized. When we were talking about the African games to be having in Kenya, then I was asking myself, because I'm running the Sport Commission of Namibia, and for us, our government is, we have got an aspect of equity. Whether you are football, the weight we give to football, we give the same weight to electronic sport. So for us, is every sport you have got, because the law makes provision that whatever sport you do, you have got all support from government. So I feel there's a need to definitely go to the Southern African zone, especially the sport area, that at least you can sensitize, because we are missing those opportunities for our athletes to compete at an African level. So I just want to make you comfortable that other in our region is doing very well. And my colleagues are in here. I think I've got Eswatini in the house here, can support that one. I've got Zambia here in the house. So obviously, Southern Africa, in terms of sport, electronic sport, we are doing very well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just thank you. I had the chance last year in December to organize the competitions in South Africa, in Johannesburg, during the Reg Expo, one of the biggest gaming and esports fair in Africa. And it was an international competition with 8 different countries, and we had Namibia players coming, female player. It was a female competition on Tekken fighting games. And the 8 players from these southern countries were accompanied by a representative of the federation of the country, or let's say a representative of the biggest stakeholders in the country. And it was really, really impressive, because I did the same in Kenya for East Africa, I did the same in DRC for Central Africa, I did the same in Senegal for West Africa. It wasn't the same. Really, in Southern Africa, you have this kind of, mindset that esports is really an opportunity, not only for the players or for the business, but also for the young generation, for the country. It was really interesting. We organized some, panels with all of them, and it was really impressive. So, yeah, really, thanks, congratulations for what you are doing. It's just the beginning, but yeah, it's really important to have this kind of starting effort from the countries.
Is there another question? Oh, there's a question there.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Violet. I'm from the prestigious Uganda Premier League. My question to the panel is, how can we leverage what you have into what we are used to as a league and other leagues in Africa?
I can speak a little bit to that. So a big conversation that has been taking place today has been around data. And I think there seems to be a general understanding of the value of data. I think the conversation that hasn't been had is, how do you actually get it? And this is where industries like gaming actually add huge value. So in designing games, you have to track everything. And when I say everything, I mean everything. So in a game, if you have 4 chairs, and the 4 chairs are different colors, you have to actually understand which one people are clicking on. And you have to be able to measure, track, evaluate, because then that can influence the decision that you make if you want to add a new chair or if you want to take out an existing chair. That level of sophistication can carry over into traditional industries like sports. You know, like when you are tracking and you want to evaluate data, how do you build data warehousing? How do you build data analysis? How do you do data visualization, as an example? You wouldn't think that video games has that benefit, but that is one area. Another thing that was spoken about today was around content creation. So when players are out there playing, who is capturing their visuals, their imagery, and documenting it? Within esports, you know, like creating content is a core part of it. So one of the things that we're doing with the report that we're working on is looking at interesting use cases of esports by brands. So one of the, I'll speak to 2 interesting use cases that we've observed. So one of them is for recruitment. You know, the gentleman over here just spoke about the fact that to get a gaming PC is $2,000. So very expensive. So we recently spoke with the guys from Deutsche Bahn, the Deutsche Railway Service, the German railway company, who actually have a gaming team. So they have an esports team. And what they're using esports to do is to use it as a tool for recruitment. So if you want to work in the railway as an engineer, you can have this as a side. So you can join their esports team, and they would sponsor you. They would cover the cost of your equipment, your devices. They would sponsor you to go for tournaments, but you work for them. So it's almost like a scholarship program, right? And that's a great incentive, because now you have these smart people who can have a job and also do something that they're very passionate about. So that's one example. And I think for sports commentary as well, in terms of finding commentators who can create commentary that can engage the younger audience. One of the questions that was also posed today was around how some of these, you know, how do you create like audience awareness? How do you create, you know, talkability for local sports? It's by engaging with influencers. It's by getting influencers to be the mouthpiece, to create commentary, to create content around the traditional sports. So these are some of the ways that, you know, like I don't see any reason why a football team should not have an esports team, because the esports team essentially could be their creative media section, right? So whilst they're doing esports and enjoying the tournament, they get the gear, they can be charged with creating content for the sports team. And there you get a win-win, right? They get to get all the equipment and sponsorship for their esports. The sports team gets all the media, commentary, content for their social media.
Just to add on that, and I'm glad the question is coming from a football league and a prestigious one, Uganda, because I'm a football guy. And one thing that pains me a lot is how African football is not taking the opportunity of esports. I believe African football has an opportunity to get money even from video games, more than even us who are purely in esports. Why? African Cup of Nations is watched by over 1 billion people. Why aren't they speaking to video game companies as using AFCON as a platform to advertise their games? UEFA has partnerships with video games. Copa Libertadores has those partnerships. In Asia, they have those partnerships. We are speaking of younger people not wanting to play or not wanting to being able to watch full football matches. But what about even data and knowledge? video games are a huge medium of transferring this data in a very playful way. You will meet teenagers in Africa who know about Ruud Gullit, who played for Netherlands. They know his strengths, his everything. And this guy played even before maybe DSTV started showing European football. But they don't know anything about Celestine Babayaro. They don't know anything about African legends. But CAF having a partnership with a video game, they can give them the license to use AFCON legends in there, so that a 10-year-old who's playing a video game can know about the top scorer of AFCON 1990. A 10-year-old or a 15-year-old or a 20-year-old knows the Champions League anthem, does not know the beautiful AFCON anthem. They have a beautiful anthem. They don't know even the match ball, how it looks like. Because when I watch them play, even picking the match ball is normally a subject. Like, it's so bad that we put rules in football tournaments that, in esports football tournaments, that this is the match ball you'll play. Because at times everyone says, I want to play maybe with the Premier League ball. They know how those balls look because of video games. Ugandan Premier League, like, I'll give an example of Kenya. The football game I was mentioning by Konami, the mobile game. Right now, with zero advertising in Kenya, they make $8,700 a week from microtransactions. And this data is there, Sensor Tower publishes it. If I were a football team, like the team I support in Kenya, FC Leopards, I'd be looking for a partnership with this team to use esports as a fun engagement tool to do competitions of this game, so that this game can be used by more people in Kenya, make more money, and pay my team some fee for sponsorship. So football, to me, you're missing a big opportunity. UPL with MTN, start with fun engagement. FIFA was gaining $150 million annually from a video game called Electronic Arts until 2022, and that partnership ended. It was one of, if not the most valuable sponsorships FIFA had. Not even Coca-Cola, not even Adidas gives them that money. It's an opportunity for us here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we can wrap up now, but our panel is still going to be around here to take any questions from you. Thank you so much to the panel for explaining to us what esports is, why it is important, because as a parent, I've always been skeptical about it, why it is important. If you talk about working for German companies now, I'm like, oh, okay, then there's an opportunity there. But thank you so much to our panel for giving us all the information that we needed about esports. And thank you so much to our audience today for listening to us and also engaging. If you need to ask any more questions, our panel is still going to be around. Thank you.